The stars had watched Earth for billions of years. But for the last 2 centuries, something else had been watching too. Far beyond the cold darkness of Neptune, a small ship floated in silence. Its hull was black like the void around it. No lights blinked on its surface. No engines burned. It simply drifted, recording everything its sensors could detect about the small blue planet near the yellow sun. Inside the ship, a Velari observer named Tal checked his instruments for the 1000th time. He had spent 40 years on this assignment. His scales had faded from bright green to dull gray. His eyes, once sharp and eager, now carried the weight of endless boredom. "Another rocket," he muttered to himself, watching the primitive humans launch yet another metal tube into their sky. "They are so slow, so very slow." He recorded the launch in his log and sent the data back to the Velari homeworld. The transmission would take 3 days to arrive. The response, if any came, would take 3 more days to return. Tal did not expect a response. The Velari Council had stopped caring about Earth decades ago. But today would be different. On the Velari homeworld, a planet called Velar Prime, High Counselor Lyra stood before the Grand Assembly. The chamber was massive, carved from white stone that glowed with soft blue light. 300 council members sat in rising circles around her, their scales ranging from deep purple to bright orange. Lyra was young for a high counselor. Her scales were still vibrant green and her eyes burned with ambition. She had spent 10 years studying the reports from Earth. She had analyzed their population growth, their resource consumption, their endless wars with each other, and she had reached a conclusion. "Earth is ready," she announced. Her voice echoed through the chamber. "The humans have developed basic space travel. They have placed stations in orbit around their planet. They have even sent explorers to their moon. But they remain confined, trapped. They have no way to leave their solar system." A senior council member named Voth raised his hand. His scales were gray with age, and his voice carried the wisdom of centuries. "We have watched Earth for nearly 200 years, Voth said carefully. "In that time, the humans have developed nuclear weapons. They have built machines that can think. They have connected their entire planet with communication networks. Are we certain they pose no threat?" Lyra smiled. It was not a kind smile. "They are children playing with dangerous toys," she replied. "Yes, they have nuclear weapons. They have pointed most of them at each other. They have come close to destroying themselves at least twice. And they're thinking machines, basic calculators compared to our technology. Their communication networks. We decoded their transmissions within days of first detecting them." She pressed a button, and a holographic image of Earth appeared in the center of the chamber. The blue planet rotated slowly, its white clouds swirling over green and brown continents. "Earth has everything we need," Lyra continued. "Fresh water, rich soil, abundant minerals, and a workforce of 8 billion beings who know nothing of the greater galaxy. They believe they are alone in the universe. They have no idea that 17 civilizations have risen and fallen while they were still living in caves." The council members murmured among themselves. Lyra could see the greed forming in their eyes. The Velari Dominion had conquered 12 worlds in the last 1,000 years. Each conquest had brought wealth and power. Earth would be no different. "I propose we send the 7th Expansion Fleet," Lyra said. "Admiral Koth will lead 17 of our finest warships to Earth. The humans will be given a choice. They can join the Dominion peacefully and serve us, or they can resist and be destroyed. Either way, Earth will belong to us." The vote was swift. 300 hands rose in approval. Not a single voice opposed the motion. On the other side of the galaxy, Earth continued its slow rotation around the sun. Its people went about their daily lives, unaware that an alien council had just decided their fate. Cars drove on highways. Children went to school. Workers built buildings and grew food and dreamed of futures they thought they controlled. But deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, 3 kilometers under the waves, A different kind of meeting was taking place. The bunker had no official name. It did not appear on any map. Its existence was known to fewer than 200 people on the entire planet. The walls were made of reinforced steel 10 meters thick. The power came from a fusion reactor that would run for 1,000 years without refueling. Fleet Admiral Yuna Kim stood at the head of a long table. She was 53 years old, with sharp eyes and gray hair cut short in a military style. She wore a uniform that no civilian had ever seen. The insignia on her shoulder showed a sword piercing through a circle of stars. It was the symbol of the United Terran Navy, an organization that the public believed did not exist. Around the table sat the most powerful people on Earth: Defense Minister T. Park, Strategic Commander Hyun Cho, Intelligence Director Mina Song, and 12 others, each responsible for a different aspect of humanity's greatest secret. "The Velari have voted," Admiral Kim announced. She pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed a map of the solar system, with 17 red dots moving slowly inward from beyond Neptune. "Their fleet departed 6 hours ago. They will reach Earth in approximately 72 hours. Defense Minister Park leaned forward. He was an older man with a calm face and steady hands. He had served in this position for 15 years, knowing that one day this moment would come. "Are we ready?" he asked simply. Admiral Kim allowed herself a small smile. "We have been ready for over a century, Minister. The question is whether the Velari are ready for us." She changed the display. The solar system vanished, replaced by an image that made several council members gasp despite their years of preparation. It showed a Dreadnought, a warship over 2 kilometers long. Its hull was covered in weapons. Its engines could push it faster than anything the Velari had ever built, and according to the display, there were 347 of them hidden across Earth. "For 200 years we have played a role," Admiral Kim explained. "The Velari detected our first radio signals in 1847. They have been watching us ever since. They saw us fight world wars with guns and bombs. They saw us launch rockets with chemical fuel. They saw us struggle to reach our own moon, and they concluded that we were primitive, weak, easy prey." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. "They never saw the truth. While our governments argued about borders and ideologies, we were building ships in secret. While our scientists publicly struggled with basic physics, they were privately developing weapons the galaxy has never seen. While the world watched us stumble toward the stars, we were already there." Strategic Commander Cho spoke up. He was a younger man known for his brilliant tactical mind. "The First Fleet is fully operational. All crews are trained and ready. We can launch within the hour if needed." Admiral Kim nodded. "Then let us prepare our welcome for the Velari. They think they are coming to conquer a primitive world. They will discover that they have walked into a trap 2 centuries in the making." Around the table, the leaders of humanity's true military began their final preparations. Above them, the people of Earth continued their normal lives, still believing they were alone in the universe. They were not alone. They had never been alone. But soon, the universe would learn that humanity was not the helpless species it appeared to be. The Velari were coming, and humanity was waiting. Admiral Koth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Velari warship called Eternal Dominion. Through the massive viewscreen before him, he watched the stars slowly drift past as his fleet moved deeper into the human solar system. He was tall for a Velari, with dark purple scales and eyes that had seen 100 worlds fall before the might of his species. He had commanded the 7th Expansion Fleet for 30 years. He had crushed rebellions on mining colonies. He had destroyed pirate bases in the outer territories. He had never lost a battle. And he was bored. "Status report," he commanded lazily, not bothering to look at his tactical officer. Bren, a young Velari with nervous orange scales, checked his instruments quickly. All 17 ships are in formation, Admiral. We have passed the orbit of the 8th planet. No threats detected. Of course no threats detected, Koth replied with a slight laugh. The humans cannot even leave their own moon. What threat could they possibly pose to us? He waved his hand, and a holographic image of Earth appeared before him. The small blue planet looked peaceful and inviting. He could already imagine the wealth it would bring to the Dominion. The minerals buried in its crust, the water covering its surface, the billions of workers ready to serve their new masters. How long until we arrive? He asked. Approximately 61 hours, Admiral. Koth nodded and settled deeper into his command chair. Wake me when something interesting happens. On Earth, something very interesting was happening. Captain Sara Lee stood in the main hangar of Installation 7, a secret military base built inside a hollowed mountain in the southern region of Korea. She was 35 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that missed nothing. She had trained for this moment since she was 12 years old. Before her stood the Unyielding, one of humanity's first-generation dreadnoughts. The ship was enormous, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull was made of a metal alloy that did not exist in any public database. Its weapons systems were more advanced than anything the Velari had developed in their entire history. And in exactly 60 hours, Captain Lee would take this ship into battle. Final checks complete, her executive officer reported. Lieutenant Wu Jin was a serious man with a quiet voice and a mind like a computer. He had served under Captain Lee for 5 years, and there was no one she trusted more. All systems are operational. Crew is ready. Captain Lee nodded slowly. She walked closer to the ship, reaching out to touch its cold metal hull. Her entire life had led to this moment. Her parents had served in the secret navy. Her grandparents had helped build the first hidden shipyards. 4 generations of her family had prepared for a war that most humans did not even know was coming. "Have you told your family?" she asked quietly. Lieutenant Jin shook his head. "They think I work for a technology company. They have no idea." "It is better that way. After tomorrow, the whole world will know, but for now the secret must hold." Across the planet, similar scenes were playing out. In a bunker beneath the frozen plains of Siberia, Commander Hyun Cho coordinated the awakening of dozens of secret installations. In a hollowed asteroid floating in the belt between Mars and Jupiter, engineers performed final tests on a hidden weapons platform. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, submarines that the public knew nothing about prepared to surface and reveal their true purpose. Humanity's mask was about to fall. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Koth was sleeping when the first strange reading appeared on Bren's console. The young tactical officer stared at it for a long moment, unsure what he was seeing. "That cannot be right," he muttered to himself. He ran the scan again. The result was the same. There was a large energy signature on Earth's moon, not from the primitive human base that the Velari had observed for decades. This signature was much larger, much more powerful, and it had appeared out of nowhere. "Admiral," Bren called out nervously. "Admiral, I think you should see this." Koth opened his eyes with an annoyed grunt. "What is it? Did the humans launch another one of their little rockets?" "No, sir, it is something else, something on their moon, a power signature unlike anything in our records." Koth pushed himself up from his chair and walked to the tactical console. He looked at the readings, and for the first time in many years, he felt a small flicker of uncertainty. "That is impossible," he said slowly. "That level of power output would require technology far beyond what the humans possess. Should I alert the fleet, Admiral?" Koth stared at the console for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "No, it is probably a sensor error. The humans are primitive. They cannot have hidden something like this from us. Run a full diagnostic on the sensors." "Yes, Admiral." But even as Koth returned to his chair, the uncertainty remained. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his scales. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Kim watched the Velari fleet on her holographic display. She could see their formation, their speed, their trajectory. She knew exactly when they would arrive. "They have detected the lunar installation," Intelligence Director Mina Song reported. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a brilliant mind. She had spent her career analyzing alien communications and predicting enemy behavior. But their admiral has dismissed it as a sensor error. Admiral Kim smiled. Of course he has. The Velari cannot imagine that we have deceived them. Their arrogance blinds them. Should we continue the power test? No, shut down the lunar installation and restore normal readings. We do not want to give them too much warning. Let them come closer. Let them believe they are safe. Director Song nodded and sent the order. On the moon, the hidden installation went dark. Its power signature vanished from Velari sensors. Admiral Koth, watching his console, felt relief wash over him. "Sensor error, just as I thought," he announced to his bridge crew. "The humans have nothing. Continue on course." The Velari fleet sailed deeper into the trap. In the mountain installation in Korea, Captain Lee gathered her crew for a final briefing. 300 men and women stood before her in the hangar, their faces serious and focused. They were the best of the best, chosen from millions of candidates who had no idea what they were training for. "In less than 60 hours, everything changes," Captain Lee told them. "The world above us still believes we are alone in the universe. They still believe that humanity is a small species on a small planet, dreaming of stars we cannot reach. Tomorrow, they will learn the truth." She paused, looking at the faces of her crew. Some were young, barely out of training. Others were veterans who had spent decades preparing for this moment. "The Velari think they are coming to conquer us. They think we are weak. They think we are primitive. They think we are afraid." Her voice grew stronger. "They are wrong. We are humanity. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed us. We have crawled out of caves and reached for the heavens, and we will not bow to anyone." A cheer rose from the crew. Captain Lee let it fade before continuing. "Tomorrow we launch. Tomorrow we show the universe what humanity truly is. Get some rest. The next few days will be the most important in human history." The crew dispersed to their quarters. Captain Lee remained in the hangar, staring up at the unyielding. In a few hours, she would command this ship into battle. She would face enemies who had conquered worlds. She would risk everything for a species that did not even know she existed. She was not afraid, she was ready. High above, the Velari fleet continued its approach. Admiral Koth slept peacefully, dreaming of the glory he would earn by conquering Earth. He did not know that his dreams were about to become nightmares. The Velari fleet had reached the orbit of Mars when Admiral Koth made his first transmission to Earth. He sat straight in his command chair, his purple scales polished to a shine, his medals displayed prominently on his chest. Behind him, his bridge crew worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. Through the view screen, the blue dot of Earth grew larger with each passing hour. "Begin transmission," he commanded. His communications officer activated the broadcasting system. Koth knew that the humans would receive his message within minutes. He had prepared his words carefully. They would be the first official contact between the Velari Dominion and the species known as humanity. "Attention, inhabitants of the third planet," he began, his voice deep and commanding. "I am Admiral Koth of the Velari Dominion. I come to offer you a choice. Surrender your world peacefully and join our great empire or face destruction. You have 12 hours to respond. Your time begins now." He ended the transmission and leaned back with satisfaction. He imagined the panic spreading across Earth. The primitive humans, realizing for the first time that they were not alone. Their leaders scrambling to understand what was happening. Their military forces, so proud of their little rockets and bombs, realizing they had no way to fight back. It would be glorious. In the underground bunker beneath the Pacific, Fleet Admiral Kim watched Koth's transmission on her display. Around her, the leaders of the true Terran military sat in silence. 12 hours, Defense Minister Park said quietly. He expects us to surrender in 12 hours. Admiral Kim smiled. Then let us not keep him waiting. Strategic Commander Cho, are all fleets ready? Commander Cho checked his console. All 347 dreadnoughts are in launch position. Crews are at full alert. Weapon systems are armed and ready. Then let us wake up. She pressed a button on her console. Across the planet, in hidden installations on every continent, massive doors began to open. The sound of metal grinding against rock echoed through secret hangars that had been sealed for decades. In the mountain installation in Korea, Captain Lee sat in the command chair of the Unyielding. Her crew was at their stations, their faces lit by the glow of their consoles. Through the forward view screen, she could see the hangar doors sliding apart, revealing a tunnel that led straight up through the mountain. "All stations report," she commanded. "Engines ready," the helm officer announced. "Weapons systems online," the tactical officer confirmed. "Shields at full power," another voice added. Lieutenant Jin turned to Captain Lee. "We are ready, Captain." She nodded slowly. "Take us up." The Unyielding rose from its cradle with a deep hum of power. Its engines, designed in secret laboratories and built by workers who would never know what they were creating, pushed the massive ship upward through the tunnel. Rock walls rushed past on all sides. Then, suddenly, there was sky. The dreadnought burst through the top of the mountain like a giant waking from sleep. It climbed higher and higher, leaving a trail of white clouds behind it as it pierced through the atmosphere. Captain Lee watched the earth fall away beneath her ship. "Beautiful," Lieutenant Jin whispered. All across the planet, the same scene repeated itself. From beneath frozen tundra in the north, from under vast deserts in the south, from the depths of oceans and the hearts of mountains, dreadnoughts rose by the dozens, then by the hundreds. They filled the sky like a swarm of metal titans, each one larger than anything humanity had ever publicly admitted to building. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Tactical Officer Bren stared at his console in horror. Warning alarms screamed throughout the ship. Red lights flashed on every surface. "Admiral," he called out, his voice cracking. "Admiral, I am detecting launches from Earth. Hundreds of them." Koth opened his eyes slowly. "Hundreds of what? More of their primitive rockets." "No, sir, ships, larger than anything we have ever seen." Koth stood and walked to the tactical console. What he saw made his scales turn pale. The holographic display showed Earth surrounded by dots, hundreds of dots. Each one represented a ship, and according to his sensors, each ship was over 2 kilometers long. "That is impossible," he breathed. "They were supposed to be primitive. Our scouts watched them for 2 centuries. They had nothing like this." "Admiral, I am detecting power signatures from those ships. They are unlike anything in our database. Energy weapons, advanced shielding, faster-than-light capability." Koth grabbed the edge of the console to steady himself. His fleet of 17 warships suddenly felt very small. The communications console beeped. A human face appeared on the view screen. It was a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, wearing a uniform that Koth did not recognize. "This is Fleet Admiral Yuna Kim of the United Terran Navy," she announced. Her voice was calm and controlled. "You gave us 12 hours to surrender. We have a different offer." She paused, and behind her, the view screen showed dozens of human dreadnoughts forming into battle lines. "You have 12 hours to withdraw from our solar system. This is your only warning. Refuse and we will destroy your fleet. The choice is yours." The transmission ended. Koth stood in silence, his mind struggling to understand what was happening. "How," he demanded, How is this possible? We watched them, we studied them, they had nothing. On his flagship, Strategic Commander Cho answered that question. They never watched carefully enough, Admiral, he said quietly. They saw what we wanted them to see. Admiral Kim nodded in agreement. For 200 years we played a role. We pretended to be primitive. We pretended to fight among ourselves. We let them see our rockets and bombs and believed that was all we had. She stood and walked to the view screen, where the image of the Velari fleet still floated. But while our governments argued about borders, we were building ships in hidden shipyards. While our scientists publicly struggled with basic physics, they were secretly developing weapons the galaxy has never seen. While the Velari watched us stumble toward the stars, we were already among them. On the unyielding, Captain Lee listened to the Admiral's words through her communication system. Pride swelled in her chest. Her grandparents had helped design these ships. Her parents had trained the first crews. And now she would command one of them into battle. Captain, Lieutenant Jin said quietly, the Velari fleet is not withdrawing. They are maintaining formation. Captain Lee was not surprised. The Velari had conquered worlds for thousands of years. They would not retreat easily. Then we will have to convince them, she replied. In his command chair, Admiral Koth had made his decision. His pride would not allow him to run from these humans. His entire life, he had been told that the Velari were superior, that no species could stand against them, that conquest was their right. All ships battle formation, he commanded. We will show these humans that a few large ships cannot defeat the might of the Dominion. His tactical officer looked at him with fear in his eyes. Admiral, they outnumber us by more than 20 to 1. Numbers mean nothing. We have experience. We have centuries of warfare behind us. These humans have never fought a real battle. They will crumble before us. On the Eternal Dominion, the crew prepared for combat. Weapons systems powered up. Shields activated. The 17 Velari warships moved into an attack formation that had brought death to countless worlds. But this world was different. This world had been waiting for them. Admiral Kim watched the Velari formation on her display. She had hoped they would retreat. She had not wanted this to become a battle, but if the Velari chose to fight, she would not hold back. All fleets, she commanded, her voice carrying to every ship in the United Terran Navy. The Velari have made their choice. Engage and destroy. 300 human dreadnoughts began to move. Their engines lit up the darkness of space like 1,000 new stars. Their weapons systems hummed with power that the Velari could not imagine. The first battle between humanity and an alien species was about to begin. And the universe would never be the same. The first shots of the battle lit up space like lightning. Admiral Koth had ordered his fleet to fire first, hoping that a quick strike would destroy some of the human ships before they could respond. 17 Velari warships unleashed their weapons at once. Plasma bolts and energy beams streaked across the darkness toward the approaching human dreadnoughts. The shots hit their targets. Bright explosions flared against human shields. Koth leaned forward in his chair, waiting for the enemy ships to crumble. They did not crumble. The human dreadnoughts pushed through the barrage without slowing down. Their shields absorbed the Velari weapons like they were nothing. On his tactical display, Koth watched in disbelief as the damage readings for the enemy ships showed zero effect. Impossible, he whispered. Our weapons should have torn through them. Admiral, his tactical officer called out with panic in his voice. The human ships are returning fire. What came next would haunt Koth's nightmares for the rest of his life. The human dreadnoughts opened fire with plasma lances, weapons that Velari scientists had dismissed as theoretical impossibilities. Beams of concentrated energy, hotter than the surface of a star, cut through space at speeds that Velari sensors could barely track. The first beam hit a Velari cruiser called the Proud Victory. It struck the ship's shields and passed through them as if they did not exist. The beam continued through the hull, slicing the cruiser in half. For a moment, the two pieces of the ship floated apart. Then the reactors exploded, and the proud victory vanished in a ball of fire. The second beam hit another ship, then another, then three more at once. "Evasive maneuvers," Koth screamed. "All ships break formation." But there was nowhere to run. The human fleet had spread out, surrounding the Velari ships from all directions. Every path of escape was blocked by dreadnoughts with weapons that made Velari technology look like children's toys. On the bridge of the Unyielding, Captain Lee watched the battle unfold with cold focus. Her ship was at the front of the human formation, leading the charge against the enemy fleet. "Target the Velari flagship," she commanded. "Disable their engines but do not destroy them. I want their admiral alive." Lieutenant Jin relayed the order to the weapons officer. The Unyielding's plasma lances powered up, their glow visible through the viewports on the ship's exterior. "Firing," the weapons officer announced. Twin beams of energy shot from the Unyielding's bow. They crossed the distance to the Eternal Dominion in less than a second. They hit the Velari flagship's engine section with surgical precision, destroying the propulsion systems while leaving the rest of the ship intact. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Koth was thrown from his chair as his ship shuddered under the impact. Alarms screamed. Crew members ran in all directions, trying to control the damage. "Engine room is gone," someone shouted. "We have lost all propulsion. Shields are failing. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Koth pulled himself to his feet, gripping his command chair for support. Through the smoke filling his bridge, he could see the tactical display. 8 of his 17 ships were already destroyed. 3 more were crippled and drifting. The rest were trying to retreat, but human dreadnoughts blocked every path. The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes. "Admiral," his communications officer said weakly, "we are receiving a transmission from the human flagship." "Put it through." Admiral Kim's face appeared on the screen. Behind her, Koth could see the calm efficiency of her bridge crew. No panic, no fear, just the quiet confidence of warriors who knew they had already won. "Your fleet is defeated, Admiral Koth," she said simply. "You can continue to fight and watch all your remaining ships be destroyed, or you can surrender now and save what is left of your people. Choose." Koth's scales flushed dark with shame and anger. He had commanded fleets for 30 years. He had never lost a battle. He had never surrendered. But he had also never faced an enemy like this. I surrender," he said, the words like poison in his mouth. On every human ship, cheers erupted. Crews embraced each other, tears streaming down their faces. They had trained their entire lives for this moment. They had prepared in secret, sacrificing normal lives for a cause most people would never know about. And they had won. Captain Lee allowed herself a small smile. "Prepare boarding teams," she ordered. "Secure the Velari flagship. I want their admiral brought to the brig with full respect for his rank." Lieutenant Jin nodded. "What about the surviving Velari ships?" "Disable their weapons and engines, but do not destroy them. They will carry our message back to their homeworld." The Unyielding moved alongside the crippled Eternal Dominion. Docking clamps extended, connecting the two ships. In the corridors of the human dreadnought, a boarding team assembled. Lieutenant Hannah Beek led the team. She was 25 years old, with the steady hands and sharp eyes of a born soldier. She had joined the United Terran Navy at 16, following in the footsteps of her mother and grandmother before her. "Remember your training," she told her team as they prepared to board. "The Velari are dangerous even when defeated. Stay alert, stay focused, and do not underestimate them." The airlock opened, and the team moved into the Velari ship. The corridors were filled with smoke and emergency lighting. Velari crew members stood along the walls, their hands raised in surrender. They stared at the human soldiers with expressions of shock and disbelief. Hannah led her team to the bridge. The doors had been damaged in the battle, and it took 2 soldiers with cutting tools to force them open. When they finally entered, they found Admiral Koth standing in the center of the room, his uniform torn and his scales covered in ash. He looked at the human soldiers with something close to respect. "You are young," he said to Hana. "Are all human warriors so young?" "We have been preparing for you our entire lives, Admiral," Hana replied. "Age means nothing compared to purpose." She approached him carefully, keeping her weapon ready. "You are under arrest in the name of the United Terran Navy. You will be treated with respect appropriate to your rank, but make no mistake, your war against Earth is over." Koth nodded slowly. "I see that now, but tell me, young warrior, your people hid from us for 2 centuries. You built these ships in secret, you let us believe you were primitive. Why? Why go through such effort?" Hana smiled, the same smile she had seen on the faces of her instructors, her parents, her grandparents. "Because, Admiral, you were watching. You and every other alien species in the galaxy. If we had revealed ourselves too soon, you would have united against us. You would have crushed us before we were ready. So we waited. We prepared. We let you underestimate us." She gestured for her team to escort the Admiral from the bridge. "And now you have learned the truth. Humanity is not weak. Humanity is not primitive. Humanity was just waiting for the right moment to stand up." Koth was led away in silence. His thoughts were troubled. He had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest. He had found something else entirely. A species that had outthought his entire civilization. A species that had hidden in plain sight for 200 years. A species that had built weapons and ships beyond anything the Velari could imagine. And now that species was free, the mask had fallen, the secret was revealed. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. On the bridge of the Unyielding, Captain Lee received a transmission from Admiral Kim. "Excellent work, Captain," the Admiral said. "The Velari fleet is secured. Surviving ships are being allowed to retreat with our message. You and your crew have made history today." Captain Lee nodded. "What happens now, Admiral?" "Now we prepare for what comes next. The Velari will not accept this defeat easily. And when news of our existence spreads through the galaxy, other species will take notice. Some will want to be our friends. Others will want to be our enemies." She paused, and through the viewscreen, Captain Lee could see the endless field of stars. "Either way, humanity is no longer hiding. The universe knows we are here, and we will never bow to anyone again." The Unyielding turned and joined the rest of the fleet. 300 dreadnoughts floating in formation around Earth, protectors of a world that was only now learning the truth about itself. The first battle was over, but the story was just beginning. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. On 100 different worlds, alien species watched recordings of the battle with shock and disbelief. The Velari, one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the known universe, had been crushed by a species they had dismissed as primitive. 17 warships destroyed or captured in less than 10 minutes. An admiral of the 7th Fleet taken prisoner by soldiers barely out of childhood. And the humans had only used a fraction of their true strength. On the Velari homeworld, High Counselor Lyra sat in her private chambers and watched the recording again. She saw the human dreadnoughts rising from Earth like ancient gods awakening. She saw Velari ships exploding under weapons fire. She saw Admiral Koth, a warrior who had never lost a battle, surrender on his own bridge. Her hands trembled as she paused the recording. She had been so certain, so confident. The humans were supposed to be easy prey. They were supposed to bow before Velari might and become another conquered world in the Dominion's collection. Instead, they had revealed a military force that could challenge the entire galaxy. A communication request appeared on her console. She accepted it, and the face of Fleet Admiral Yuna Kim filled her screen. "High Counselor Lyra," the human said calmly, I believe we have matters to discuss." Lyra forced her scales to remain steady. She would not show fear to this human, even now. "You have made your point, Admiral. Your species is more advanced than we believed. But do not think this one battle changes everything. The Velari Dominion has ruled this region of space for thousands of years. We have resources you cannot imagine." Admiral Kim nodded slowly. "I am sure you do, and I am sure you are already considering how to use those resources against us, planning your revenge, gathering allies who also fear what humanity has become." Lyra said nothing, but her silence was confirmation enough. "Let me save you the trouble," Admiral Kim continued. "The battle you witnessed was fought by 47 of our dreadnoughts. We have 300 more, and those are just the ships we built in the first century of our program." She leaned forward, and her eyes carried a weight that made Lyra's scales shiver despite herself. "For the past 50 years, we have been building second-generation vessels, ships that make the unyielding look like a transport shuttle. We have weapons platforms hidden in asteroids throughout our solar system. We have orbital defense stations that could vaporize your entire homeworld from the edge of your star system." Lyra's face went pale. "You are bluffing." "Am I? You watched us for 2 centuries and never saw our first fleet. Do you really believe you have seen everything we have?" The silence stretched between them. Lyra knew she was defeated, not just in this battle but in the entire game she had thought she was playing. The humans had been playing a longer game, with higher stakes, and they had won completely. "What do you want?" Lyra finally asked. Admiral Kim's expression softened slightly. "Humanity does not want war. We do not want to conquer your worlds or enslave your people. We want what every species wants: safety, freedom, respect." She held up a data pad. "This is our offer. The Velari Dominion will withdraw from all systems within 50 light-years of Earth. You will release any species you have conquered who wish to be free. You will sign a treaty of non-aggression that will last for 100 years. "And in exchange?" Lyra asked cautiously. "In exchange, we offer peace, we offer trade, we offer the chance to learn from each other rather than destroy each other." Admiral Kim paused. "The galaxy is vast, Counselor. There is room for all of us. We do not have to be enemies." Lyra stared at the human for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "I will bring your terms to the Grand Assembly, but I cannot promise they will accept." "They will accept," Admiral Kim said with quiet confidence. "Because the alternative is a war they cannot win. Make sure they understand that." The transmission ended. Lyra sat alone in her chambers, surrounded by the weight of a defeat she still could not fully understand. 6 months later, the galaxy had changed. The Velari had accepted the human terms. Their withdrawal from the systems around Earth had begun. Slave species who had served the Dominion for centuries were suddenly free, looking toward the blue planet that had broken their chains. Other civilizations had sent ambassadors to Earth. Some came with offers of friendship and trade. Others came simply to see the species that had humbled the Velari. All of them left with a new understanding of humanity. On the Unyielding, Captain Sora Lee prepared for her ship's first diplomatic mission beyond human space. Her crew had been expanded to include specialists in alien languages, customs, and technology. Lieutenant Wu Jin still served as her executive officer, steady and reliable as always. And Lieutenant Hana Beek had been promoted to head of shipboard security, the youngest officer to hold that position in the history of the fleet. "Captain," Lieutenant Jin reported from his station, "all systems are ready. The hyperspace route to the Tavari Confederation is calculated and loaded." Captain Lee nodded. The Tavari were one of the species that the Velari had long oppressed. They had been among the first to request contact with humanity, eager to meet the civilization that had defeated their former masters. "Open a shipwide channel," she commanded. A soft chime indicated that every member of the crew could hear her. This is Captain Lee. Today we begin a new chapter in human history. For 2 centuries we hid in the shadows preparing for a war we hoped would never come. When that war did come, we fought and we won. But victory was never our goal. Peace was our goal. Friendship was our goal, a place among the stars where humanity could live without fear. She paused, looking around at her bridge crew. These were the children of the secret, raised in hidden facilities, trained for a future their parents could only imagine. Today, we take the first step toward that future. We go not as conquerors but as ambassadors, not as warriors but as friends. The galaxy feared us because they did not understand us. It is time to change that. She turned to face the view screen, where the stars waited. Helm, take us to hyperspace. The Unyielding's engines hummed with power. Space twisted around the ship as it entered hyperspace, leaving the solar system behind. In seconds, the Dreadnought had traveled farther than any publicly known human vessel in history. In her command chair, Captain Lee allowed herself a moment of wonder. Her grandmother had helped design the first hyperspace engines. Her mother had tested them in secret flights beyond Neptune. And now, she was using them to carry humanity's message to the stars. On Earth, the world was still adjusting to the truth. The governments that had secretly funded the program for 2 centuries finally revealed themselves. The workers who had built ships without knowing their purpose finally understood what they had created. Children who had grown up believing they were alone in the universe suddenly had to accept that they had never been alone at all. Fleet Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the Unyielding's departure on her long-range sensors. Defense Minister Park stood beside her, his old face lined with satisfaction. "We did it," he said quietly. "Everything our grandparents dreamed of, everything our parents worked for, we actually did it." Admiral Kim nodded slowly. "We won the first battle, but the real work begins now, building alliances, establishing trade, proving to the galaxy that humanity can be trusted." She turned to face him. "We hid for 2 centuries because we had to. Now we must learn how to live in the open. That may be the greatest challenge we have ever faced." Defense Minister Park smiled. "If we can build a secret navy under the noses of an alien empire, I think we can handle a few trade negotiations." Admiral Kim laughed, a rare sound from the woman who had carried the weight of humanity's survival on her shoulders for so long. "Perhaps you are right, old friend. Perhaps the hard part is finally over." She looked back at the view screen, where the stars gleamed with promise and possibility. "Either way, the universe knows we are here now, and we are not going anywhere." Far from Earth, the Unyielding emerged from hyperspace near the Tavari homeworld. Captain Lee saw a planet covered in green forests and blue oceans, beautiful in a way that reminded her of home. A fleet of Tavari ships moved to greet them, not as enemies, but as hosts welcoming honored guests. "Captain," Lieutenant Jin reported with a smile, "the Tavari are sending a welcome message. They say they have been waiting for us." Captain Lee stood and straightened her uniform. Behind her, Hana Beek checked her security team one final time. "Then let us not keep them waiting," the captain said. "Open a channel. It is time for humanity to say hello." The message was sent. The reply came quickly, and in the space between 2 stars, 2 species began a conversation that would shape the future of the galaxy. Humanity was no longer alone. Humanity was no longer hiding. Humanity had finally come home to the stars. And this was only the beginning.